Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Indic Explorer YouTube channel. This is your host, the Indic Explorer, and this is an all new episode of the Indic Underground, a show where we weekly meet interesting people from the Indic cultural sphere, and a show which explores the interplay of dharma and modernity. And talking about dharma and modernity, how many of us, when we understood the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, what was our first experience of knowing these stories? It was most likely a grandmother's tale, a family tale told at night, or it was the television show, the popular show of B.R. Chopra or Ramanand Sagar, or it was reading a book or a novel, which retold the stories of these epics. But the guest of today's show has found another brand new format of taking these epics from the yesteryears to the modern world, to the next generation, where he organizes tellings and discussions of the Mahabharata in very chic cafes and eat outs, where youngsters hang out over a casual conversation. Without stealing his thunder any further, let me introduce you to the guest of today's show, Suneet from Kasa Kai. Welcome to the show, Suneet.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the name, the Indic Underground. I think somewhere from the underground, you've been able to pull people like us, and you're getting us some sort of a limelight on the social media, on YouTube. So very happy to be over here. And yes, I think I'm from the B.R. Chopra generation over here, right? So my story with the Mahabharata starts with the B.R. Chopra show, and yeah, looking forward to have this discussion with you.
So coming back, Suneet, I want to ask you because whenever a new idea comes about, right, the question is, what is the gap or the problem that it is solving? So what did you feel was the gap? Why did you feel the need of doing this? And after that, take us through the journey of how you went about crafting this whole concept, from start to finish.
Sure, it's a long story. I hope that is fine. I think right since my childhood, I was always fascinated with the Mahabharata. Right, so as I said, B.R. Chopra's version of the story was something which encapsulated me. And it was initially the fight scenes, the war scenes that I loved to see. The entire family used to gather every Sunday and watch the show. I also love to do so, but I always used to wait for war scene or a fight scene. And as time passed, as the show kept coming onto the channels in repeat telecasts, and as I grew older, I always kept seeing them, and always, every time I saw it, there's always a new perspective through which you could see the epic, right? And that is the beauty of the epic. Every time, even during recitals, every time I meet interesting people, every time when I speak about the Mahabharata, there is something new that strikes. Some character you were not liking in the beginning, you suddenly start liking those characters. Some of them that you'll like in the future, right? So it's an amazing story, first of all, right? Secondly, obviously, I've done my engineering, I've done my MBA, right? And later on decided, while I was doing my MBA, that I will start a business of my own, which has to be something around experiences. Finally decided to do experiences around people's hobbies and interests. So started doing things around sports, things around music, dance. I was like, there has to be something about Indian culture. There has to be something about storytelling. And I personally, as I said, since childhood, have been very interested in the Mahabharata. So I knew that I had to do something around the Mahabharata. Parallelly in my life, there have been a couple of times. So I'd done a job after my engineering. I was in Chennai, right? The people from various cultures over there, from the north, from the south, everywhere. And we used to sit in the pantry a lot of times, and one day there was this conversation that came about around the Mahabharata, and suddenly I started speaking, I started giving answers to people. They came back with more questions. I went back to my desk. Rather than working, I'm on Wikipedia and on Google and trying to research what should be the answer for the things that they're asking, trying to figure out various logics, because I feel it's a very logical tale as well, right? So used to come back with answers, have those discussions over and over again, right? So that kind of was the seed for these discussions or these storytelling sessions that I used to do. Similar thing happened when I was doing my MBA, right? In MBA, generally people are up all night, studying, doing projects and all. One fine night, we are all very free. We are a group of around 15 odd friends sitting in a circle, and again, there was some ignition. Someone was talking about the Mahabharata, and I gave an answer, and there was another question, and I kept giving answers. और कब रात की सुबह हो गई, no one realized, right? It was morning, and everyone was still there, all 15 of us. I knew that there is something around it, and it can capture people's imaginations, especially the generation to which we belong. So yeah, when I started Kasa Kai, which was around culture, which was around experiences, especially shared experiences, wanted to capture those people who had a lot of interest in the Mahabharata, and I knew they had nowhere to go because I was one of them, right? There's nowhere to go. There's one odd play happening, once every year, which you could go to. But other than that, nothing where you would explore yourself, where you'll get a chance to express yourself and find people like yourself. So yeah, I just thought I'll bring that format which I use with my friends and start a storytelling session. I tried doing it once. I did not get a lot of registrations. I tried doing it twice. Again, not a lot of registrations. In the third time, I remember this was Independence Day back in 2017 when we even started Kasa Kai in 2017, right? So it was 4 months into Kasa Kai. Finally, the third time I tried, I had a few registrations. I was not sure if people will show up. Throughout the day, I was just contemplating whether I should be going or we should just call people and cancel it. And I was like, okay, let's just go and do it. It's always been top of the mind. You have to do it once. Why don't you do it here itself, right? So there's this very chic cafe in Bandra in Mumbai, right? So we went over there, and luckily a few of the people who had registered showed up. I was not very well prepared. I just knew that I can keep speaking, but there was not a lot of preparation as such which had gone into it. So I just went about, I started whatever I knew and I just kept speaking whatever I knew. And there were people who were well learned as well, who had read a lot of stuff as well, right? So they kept adding in their bits and pieces as well. So obviously I believe that it is something which happened, right? It is a part of our culture, it is a part of our history, it is a part of our ancestors, right? But there are various versions. As the story has passed on, people have had different versions, and now there is some logic which also goes into your acceptance of the story, right? So there are different perspectives which came in and made it all the more interesting. And throughout this journey, what I've been doing is, after meeting such people, after such sessions, I just go back and make a note of all the new things that I keep learning. So there is a book called Jaya, which is a very basic recitation of the Mahabharata, right? So I generally go to that if I want to do a quick revision. And along with these notes that I have, these various people that I've met, I even tend to have some conversations with them. Every time there's something new that I try to bring to the plate whenever I do such recitations.
Interesting. And the Mahabharata to me, actually, as an epic, it works at three different levels. At a macro level, it's the story of who we are and where we came from, the story of Bharatvarsha. At a second level, it has its own regional flavors, where each region has its own way of rendering the epic. And at a third level, at a micro level, at a very base level, there's those family stories that are also there, which are very exclusive to certain families or certain people only, right? Which is like the insider thing. So it works at three different levels. But having said that, talking about your the event that you do, what kind of venues, like how did you go about choosing these venues? What kind of venues do you choose, and what kind of demographic of people actually come? Is it the young folks? Are there older people? So both these two things. What was your intention initially? Of whom did you want to come, and who actually came?
Initially, the plan was to do it in a very, I would say, in a way that the current generation would kind of relate to, right? So the language also that I use is not, a pure Hindi or even a pure English. It's a mix of Hindi, English with a lot of current slangs, as you would say, right, being used as well, right, which we generally use in our day-to-day parlance. So it's a hep way in which I try to recite the story, and the intention was to reach out to the youth, people who are somewhere between 18 and let's say 35 odd years of age, right? So that was the intention, and hence we used to do such gatherings at various popular cafes across Mumbai. So we've done it in cafes like Curly's and Musty, and most recently and the longest running has been at this place called Dulali, which is a tap room, right? So as I said, it's a very modern way to recite the story. It is targeted at the youth currently, and even if let's say someone else is interested, we are very much open to have them. The only understanding that we try to give to people through whatever our branding or whatever our creatives is that there's going to be a very modern way of storytelling. We are not going to be using proper Hindi and Sanskrit words. It's going to be very basic, common Mumbai language that we are going to be using. So people also come with such expectations. We've never had people, who've come with very hardcore expectations that it's going to be something very religious. In fact, we always have a disclaimer that this is not religious, this is not political, there's no agenda over here, there is, no particular sect or caste or religion that we are favoring. It's just a modern day gathering of people who are just interested in this story and want to give their perspectives and want to learn from other people's perspectives as well.
Well, Dulali Tap Room, pretty damn interesting place to have a Mahabharata reading. I do want to ask you, why specifically the Mahabharata? I know from Mahabharata you also once in a while added other epics as well, including the Ramayana, but mostly your the prime attraction is the Mahabharata. So why was it the Mahabharata only?
Right. So there are multiple reasons for this. As I said, I personally was very interested in the Mahabharata, and when I started Kasa Kai, I first felt if I can't satisfy my requirements over here, how can I go about satisfying other people's requirements? So that was one primary reason why we wanted to do Mahabharata. But why Mahabharata has stuck around since the last 5 years, right? We started in 2017. We're still doing recitals and discussions around Mahabharata in 2022. Why it has stuck around is very simple. I think everyone can relate with the Mahabharata. It is a story of mere mortals. It is a story where people are making some mistakes, where there are some judgment issues, some mistakes happening, which even a common day man can do. And hence, there's a lot to relate to and learn from, right? So, I think that is one major reason why Mahabharata has stuck around over here. We've also done a few things around Rama, and we've done a few discussions around the Bhagavad Gita as well. There's been a good take for that too, but Mahabharat obviously wins the cake because, as I said, it's very easy to relate to as compared to other epics. Plus, so many characters, so many storylines. It's very interesting. It's so well intertwined, and I feel I say that that for me is my biggest reason to believe that that happened. No one can think of a story like this. Not even the best of storytellers can think of a story like this and write it down. So it seems to be very logical. It seems to be very complex and mysterious in its own ways. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, and hence we've had people, and there are people who keep coming again and again and again. Same recital also. There are people who come to listen to them again and again. So it's become quite a group. I am very proud of this one community that we've made at Kasaka Mumbai.
Yeah, and I think the other appealing part of about the Mahabharata is the characters are so gray, right? Nobody is pure evil or pure good. That is one. And I think the relevance to modernity also that I feel of the Mahabharata is that the characters are not perfect. You actually meet Shakunis and Bhishma Pitas and Arjunas in your daily life. They are an archetype, right? I think that is the high relativity factor for the Mahabharata. But coming to, because the lockdown and COVID was an important part of everyone's reality, what did you do to reinvent yourself in this event during the lockdown? What did you actually do to continue the stream that you had already created? So
So before we move on to that, a very, very interesting thing that you just said, where every character, there's everyone has a mix of good and bad in them. I mean, you can take someone like Duryodhan, perceived to be completely evil, but over there also during our discussions, we've talked about Duryodhan, we've done a full character analysis, and there were a few people who felt, if Duryodhan's side had won the war, the story would have been completely opposite, and Duryodhan would have been seen as a hero as well, right? And there have been certain instances where Duryodhan has also done a lot of good, right? Similarly, Karan or Arjun, they've also had their dilemmas. They've never been 100% pure or 100% correct. Even after listening to the Bhagavad Gita, Arjun had, these instances, these moments where he fell weak due to the relations, that he had and the relatives he was facing in the war. Another important anecdote that I would want to add over here, as you progress in your journey, I'm pretty sure the Indic Explorer, you might have also seen this in your journey as well, that your favorite character keeps moving from one character to the other. I think I started off with my favorite being Bhishma. Then I went to Karna. Currently, I was at Yudhishthir. But slowly, steadily, I know everyone is going to move towards Krishna. So that is the journey that you will have when you see the story, when you learn about it, right? So amazing. Now coming to the COVID times, right? So obviously when COVID struck, we were not sure how long it is going to last. We didn't know, but the thing is that Kasa Kai, we had faced, a lot of issues during the initial few, I would say not initial few years. It was just two to 3 years old at COVID, but 1 year into our existence, we had faced a lot of problems. We had tried to do something big, we could not deliver, and we were back to square one, right? So we had seen very bad days. So COVID, we were very much prepared. We had already started doing events online itself, right? So initially we had a WhatsApp group where people interested in the Mahabharata were there. We started doing WhatsApp discussions on characters, right? So once every week or twice every week, we used to have a discussion on, let's say, a character like Karna, or we used to do parallels between Karna and Arjun, right? Or we used to discuss a particular part of the story. So initially, it used to be WhatsApp text conversations, right? Zoom was still, making its waves, but we hadn't yet adapted to Zoom. We were just doing WhatsApp discussions, right? 1 month into the lockdown, we realized this is going to be long. So we figured out how can we have people being seen and people being heard, and that is where we went to Zoom, where we had Zoom discussions. And the best part of this was, before the lockdown, we had to meet at a particular place. Everyone had to come down, right? Dulali Tap Room, as we had discussed. It was right in the middle of the city, but people used to come from various corners. There are few people who used to make commutes of 1.5, 2 hours one way to come and discuss their thoughts on the Mahabharata, and then go back again 1.5 to 2 hours. With the online model, what happened was it became very easy for people to connect, and we in fact got so many new followers as well, getting added to our groups, getting added to our recitals and discussions, and not just from Mumbai but from across the country as well. In fact, we had a few people joining in from other countries too, who knew people were already over here in India and were attending our sessions, right? So through the word of mouth, there are a lot of people who used to join in. We started doing our discussions and recitals online, and parallelly, what we also did was, instead of just me, there were others as well, plus a few of our friends who used to come to our gatherings quite often and were now well adept and well versed with the story. They also started taking the lead and started holding these discussions and recitals in their own way, right? So that is something we encourage, that do it in your own style, so that it is the best experience that someone who's listening is having. Started doing all of this, and then we went to a more audio visual way, where we started making presentations, right? We had PowerPoints with lots of images, right? So it was very good to the eyes. There were some texts, very important texts written, on each slide. After every, session, we used to discuss whatever we learned. So there were some morals that were discussed with people. What can they incorporate in their day-to-day lives? We used to also sometimes use some ambient music in the background, right? So we made it very interactive and a lot of fun while we were doing this online. So I remember this once we did an entire. So generally, I used to recite the Mahabharata in 2 sessions of 3 hours each. Generally, those 3 hours used to go to 4 hours as well, and people used to sit back. So very thankful that they were so patient. So we broke it into 15 sessions of 1 hour each, right? And we had great audiovisual presentations that we used to give while presenting the story of the Mahabharata. So yeah, we broke it down to the story recitation. We broke it down into character discussions, into parts of the stories that we used to discuss. Any moral that we are learning, we used to have discussion on that as well. So I would say it was a blessing in disguise that through the lockdown, through these online events, we were actually able to explore a lot more than what we were doing before the lockdown as well.
Okay. Once you started and then, it caught fire, how has the scaling been like, from the initial time when there were very few people? How many people typically attend these events? And in terms of your future outlook, where do you see taking this forward? Like, have you gone to other cities beyond Mumbai? Have you added other epics? Like you said, you also do Ramayana once in a while. What's your future plan in terms of scaling this?
Right, very interesting. Because generally, it is through these conversations that I generally go back to, planning for the future and figuring out where I see this. So, yeah, first of all, let me tell you how the journey has been, right? So, initially, when we started off, so it wasn't very smooth, obviously, initially, right? As I said, it took me 3 attempts to actually do the first meeting. And even after that, it wasn't very frequent. We used to do a meeting every couple of months. So for the first year or two, we were just meeting 4 to 5 times every year. And then somewhere in 2019, we decided, yeah, there is a crowd for this. People want to come, people want to join in. And, instead of increasing the audience size for any event, because we wanted to keep it very limited gathering so that people have a chance and at the same time feel comfortable giving out their thoughts as well, right? Because Mahabharat can sometimes be very vague as well for someone, right? So we wanted people to be very free and creative in terms of their expressions. And hence we wanted to keep our gatherings limited to somewhere in the range of 8 to 12 people, right? So what we did was we increased the number of our gatherings. We started doing it every Saturday, right? So Dulali Tap Room every Saturday, 3 to 6 p.m. without fail. There are some people who used to just without fail take the train, come to Dulali, sit over there, 3 o'clock. They knew that it is going to be the Mahabharata day. Sometimes when I was ill or something, we had to separately call such people because we knew that they're going to come if we don't, inform them. So you had to tell them that, okay, the session is probably not happening today. So we used to do more such gatherings. Also, we've explored obviously other epics as well. As I said, we did some sessions on the Bhagavad Gita during the lockdown again, right? 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, 18 sessions, one every week. We encourage people to read the Gita, try to interpret it by themselves, and come back every Sunday and discuss their thoughts with the narrator who was, generally I was leading those particular sessions as well, right? So we used to discuss, we used to go through all the shloks, right? So obviously there's a lot of scope. We can talk about various Indian epics, Ramayana being another popular one, but there are so many avatars of Vishnu, right? The Saftar, as we say, right? So many avatars around which there are so many stories, so many things around the culture, so many ways of reciting, right? I am reciting Mahabharata in a certain way. The Indic explorer will recite the Mahabharata in another way, right? We have other storytellers who recite in their own ways. Everyone has their own versions of the stories. I remember once there was someone who was writing a book on the Mahabharata who had also joined us, and he had his own versions of the story, right? And he had made it a more modern day kind of a marvel in his recitation, in his recital, in his book, right? So the scope is limitless. You can do a lot of things, right? When it comes to the content bit, obviously plans would also be to go to various cities and do that. But where do I look at it in the long run? In the long run, I hope that someday people like us, obviously we need to prepare hard as well, right? We need to have our stories sorted, our research sorted. But I'm seeing one day people like us get a chance to recite in front of a few thousand people, right, in big auditoriums, where we are giving away our version of the story. So that is the vision I have around this, and hopefully, someday all of us will be able to make it a reality.
Interesting. So, since we are talking about Mahabharata recitals, let me ask you, who are your personal favorite characters in the Mahabharata? I know it keeps changing for all of us, but right now, who is the flavor of the season? And, not just one, maybe the top three, four characters, and talk about why.
Sure, amazing. So I think I have a kind of a theme when it comes to the characters I like, right? Initially, it were Bhishma and Karna, right? Very pure, very honest, right? Very empathetic. Somewhere I relate with them as well, right? I feel I also have that kind of compassion that these characters had, and always true to their cause. Even though Bhishma was fighting for the Kauravas in the war, he was fighting against the Pandavas. He knew the Pandavas are going to win. He gave his best in the war. I just love the purity in that character. And in the B.R. Chopra's version of the Mahabharata, I just love how the role has been portrayed, especially the day in the war where Arjun puts Bhishma on a bed of arrows, and how all warriors climb down their chariots and give their respects to Bhishma, right? So just love the character, right? Right from the start, right from the sacrifices for his father that he gave, the Bhishma Pratigya that he took. So I hope the people listening to this know, but I still give a brief about this, right? This is one of my favorite parts of the story, right? Bhishma's father was Shantanu, right? So Shantanu first married Ganga, and Ganga had made him take a promise that he won't ask Ganga anything. He would let her do whatever she wanted to do, right? So Shantanu was so madly in love with Ganga, he agreed to her. He didn't listen to anything, he just agreed to her कि हाँ यार ठीक है आपसे मेरे को बस शादी करनी है. And he was very happy in his life. And I feel a lot of us, not to the extremes of Shantanu, but somewhere we can relate with Shantanu with all the ups and downs that he had, right? He was super happy, he married Ganga, right? And they had their first child. And Ganga goes to the river and she drowns the child. And this guy can't ask her anything because obviously he's promised her. If he asked her anything, she said that I will be leaving you forever, right? Obviously, Ganga also is not a bad character. There is some part to their story beforehand due to which she's doing all of this, right? So I'll come to that. But this keeps happening. This happened 7 times that, she gave birth to a child and she used to just drown the child in the river. The eighth child, when she was taking to the river, finally, Shantanu stopped her. He asked her to stop. And once he asked her, obviously, Ganga was now free to go wherever she wanted to. So, that is where in the story we get to know that Ganga and Shantanu. So, Ganga was the daughter of Brahma. And Shantanu, in one of his previous janmas, had gone to the heaven basically, right? So, there used to be a darbar. Indra ka jo darbar hota, he had gone over there. And, Ganga's upper garment fell over. There was a gust of wind due to which her upper garment fell over. All the devas lowered their eyes in respect, right? But this guy was so much enchanted by her beauty that he kept looking at her. And Ganga also kept encouraging him because she also liked the attention she was receiving. All this was being seen by Brahma. And Brahma gave them a curse, right? Both of them, that they will be born on the earth, which was a kind of a curse in Devlok, right? Being born on the earth, which is a lower level than where they are. When Ganga got this curse before she went to earth, there were these gatekeepers. Now, again, there are multiple versions of this story. Some say these are gatekeepers of Indradev, some say these are gatekeepers of Vishnu. So they also had a curse on themselves that they would also take birth on the earth because they were trying to steal this cow called Kamdhenu, right? Which is a Ichha Purthi guy, as they say, right? Which makes all your wishes come true, right? So they were trying to steal this cow and they had got the curse basically, right? From the Rishi himself. He was one of the Sapta Rishis. Let's not go into that story, warna bahut lamba ho jayega. But they got a curse that they would be taking birth on the earth, right? So all 8 of them hence went to Ganga and asked her that give us the birth and make us die immediately, right? Kill us immediately. We can't stay away from our God very long. So we want to come back to our God. They used to love their God. As I said, Indra or Vishnu, there are multiple versions of the story. So that is why Ganga was drowning each son. She was giving birth to these gatekeepers, these Vasus as they were called, right? And the eighth one, when Shantanu stopped her, she was like, oh my God, this kid has a very dark future. He's going to struggle a lot, right? There's going to be, he won't become a king. He won't marry. He won't have kids, right? He will always be alone, right? And she said it right then itself. And Shantanu was like, what are you saying, lady? I'll make him be the king. I'll get him married. He'll have sons. Why not? And Ganga gave the kid to Shantanu and she, left her. She didn't give it immediately. She took the kid with herself, got him trained in various, in warfare, in politics, in running a kingdom, right? And she gave him back to Shantanu once he was a young man, right? So now look at Shantanu. He was very happy when he was married with Ganga. And he was very sad when she kept drowning his sons. Then again, sad because she left along with the son. Then again, happy because the son came back. And finally, Shantanu fell again in love, this time with this character called Satyavati, who used to get people to cross a particular river on her boat, right? So, nav चालक थी basically वो. And she had a fragrance around herself, right? That was something unique about her, and her fragrance could attract anyone. And one day when Shantanu had gone to hunt, उन्होंने सूंघी ये सुगंध, and he followed the fragrance and he went to the river, and that is where he sees Satyavati. Bang! Love at first sight, right? He's fallen in love. He wants to marry her. He goes to her father. He asks for her hand. Her father says no. इसकी भाग्य में लिखा है, इसके हाथ में लिखा है कि इसके बेटे राजा होंगे. And again, there's a big backstory about it. But Satyavati basically was the daughter of a king who had abandoned her, right? So again, there are multiple versions of the story. Some people feel that that was the reason why that adopted father was the head of the fisher folk. He wanted her to have kings as sons, right? So that is one thing. Probably it was there in her hand as well. You won't know now, obviously, but yeah, he told Shantanu this, and obviously he said no because Shantanu already had a son whose name was Devvrat, right? Devvrat becomes Bhishma later, but his name was Devvrat. And Shantanu, again, after this spell of happiness, after getting his son back, falling in love, he's again very sad in life, very disturbed, very distressed. When Devvrat saw his father so depressed, he figured out, ki, okay, this is the scene. He goes to Satyavati's father, Dashraj. He asks him, ki, why are you not allowing Satyavati to marry my father? Anyone would allow their daughter to do that. He's a king at the end of the day, right? So Dashraj tells him that, the reason why I'm not allowing is you are the reason. Her children are supposed to be kings in the future. How can she marry your father if you're already there? You will be the king without any second thoughts. And that is why I love Bhishma, right? Without any second thoughts, for the love that he had for his father, right? So pure that he took an oath that I would never be the king. Nashaj was like, what about your children? You'll get married, you'll have children of your own, they'll fight for the taking everyone. And this always used to give me, and still gives me goosebumps. Everyone as a witness, the earth, the moon, the sun, the sky, the devs, everyone. मैं देवव्रत ये प्रतिज्ञा लेता हूँ कि मैं आजीवन ब्रह्मचारी रहूंगा. So he takes an oath of brahmachari. He will never marry, he will never have children, right? Just for the love of his father, so that his father is happy, he gets to marry the love that he has, right? So he takes this pratigya, and such was the energy when he took the pratigya. There was lightning all around, thunder, a lot of rain. The devas came together. They started pouring flowers on Devrat, because this is not an easy pratigya. This is a very difficult pratigya, right? Especially coming from someone who's at such a high pedestal in his life, right? Who's being trained to be the king of the future. He's giving away everything. All the devas, while sprinkling flowers, all of them utter the word Bhishma. Bhishma means the terrible. He had taken a very terrible oath. And because all the devas, there's a rule that when all the devas say the same word together for a person, it becomes his name. And that is why he was called Bhishma, right? So the story doesn't end there, right? Once he goes back, in the kingdom as well, people are unhappy that, how can the king, how can Shantanu give the throne to someone who's not even born yet, when we have such a able ruler over here? That is where he promises that, don't worry, I promise to you guys that, I will always be there for the king. I will always listen. I will always do things which are beneficial for the king and the kingdom of Hastinapur, right? So he gets himself tied to the kingdom. Even without being a king, he's going to protect the kingdom come what may, right? Thirdly, his father, although again, when he got to know that he took such a oath, first he saw Satyavati, he was very happy. Then he gets to know that his son took such a oath. He becomes again very depressed, but he had also done a lot of penance. So he had a lot of power in himself, and he transfers the power as a boon to Devvrat that, what, son, I give you a boon of इच्छा मृत्यु, which means whenever तुम्हारी इच्छा जब होगी तुम तब मृत्यु लोक जाओगे. You will die whenever you wish to die. No one can kill you, right? Which is again something very big, because everyone wanted to be immortal then, and even now I feel, right, everyone wants to live longer, right? So he had that boon as well, but that in a way was a kind of bane as well for him, because of all the promises he had taken. His final promise was to his father, who one day had a dream where his ancestors had come to him that, you have put the kingdom of Hastinapur in great danger and trouble now, because we don't know how the next king is going to be like, how the children of Satyavati are going to be like, right? And he was very upset and scared and depressed again. He gave his word, Bhishma, I mean, the depressed person was Shantanu. Bhishma gave a word to his father Shantanu that I will not die unless things are in place in Hastinapur. I will stay alive until then, right? So that is why in the war field as well, until the Pandavas won, Bhishma did not die. He was suffering through a lot of pain. He should try to understand, right? Hundreds of arrows pierced through him. Obviously, it's going to be very painful, choking out all the blood from him, right? So even though he had so much pain in him, he kept his word till the last time, right? And he only took the Ichamrityu thing, and he died basically only after the Pandavas had won the war and the kingdom was safe at that point of time, right? So that is what I love about Bhishma. Long story I have said, but yeah, similar stories around Karna as well. The way he was so charitable, right? Just before the war, Indra, who was Arjun's father, right? Although Arjun was a Pandava, Kunti had a boon where she could call any Dev and get a son from that particular Dev, right? and due to certain curses, Pandu could not mate with Kunti and produce offsprings. So Pandu had asked her to call one by one call certain devas and get sons. So Arjun basically was the son of Indradev, and before the war, Indradev was scared that in a duel between Arjun and Karna should not kill Arjun, right? So he wanted to weaken Karna. So one day he took a disguise of a Brahmin. And Karna के बारे में ये था कि सुबह सुबह उनके सामने कोई ब्राह्मण कुछ भी मांगे. He never said no. And Karna knew that Indra is going to come in a disguise. He still went in front of Indra. Indra asked him for his kavach and kundals. Karna was the son of Suryadev. He was also son of Kunti, which we get to know later in the epic, right? So Karna was born to Suryadev and hence was born with a lot of protection. So kavach and kundal, right? So he had certain earrings and he had a shield. His chest was a shield basically, so no one could kill him, right? And Indradev, in the disguise of a Brahmin, asked him for his kavach and kundal. Again, without thinking twice, the donor that he was, the charitable person that he was, he just took a knife, he just took off his kavach and kundal from him, which were attached to his body, right? So it was, in a way, taking off his skin, and he gave it to Indradev. Indradev was so impressed by this. He gifted Karna a weapon. I think this was called Pashupatastra. I think, if I'm not wrong, right? So he gifted him the Pashupatastra, which Karna was saving for Arjun in the war whenever he came face to face with Arjun, and hence Krishna, when Karna entered the war in the initial days, was keeping Arjun away from Karna, right? And Karna finally had to use it on Ghatotkacha, who was the son of Bhim, who was causing a lot of panic, lot of destruction to the Kaurava army. So Duryodhan had to request Karna ki please use this astra that you have on this demon, because Ghatotkacha, was a half Rakshas, half person basically, because his mother was from a Rakshas kind of a background, right? So yeah, very, very interesting stories around these two guys. So yeah, I love these two people. And I think my latest love was Yudhishthir. I'm moving towards Krishna, as I said. My latest love was Yudhishthir again, purely because of the way he always remained impartial. He always remained truthful, always was fair to everyone, right? He always listened to everyone. Obviously, one very major and sad incident around Yudhishthir was the game of dice. Again, there are theories around it which say that he was trying to do whatever he did for a kind of a larger good, where he was trying to avoid war, right? Again, obviously, there people are obviously, or on both sides, right? Some may empathize, some may feel that it still shouldn't have been done, right? And at the end of the day, in certain versions of the story, and obviously I can't say if it is true or not, but in certain versions of the story, it is said that Yudhishthir was the only Pandav who went to Swarg rather than Nark, right? So very, very interesting character Yudhishthir as well. So yes, over to you.
No discussion on the Mahabharata can be full without mention of Krishna. So,
Perfect. So I think there are a lot of episodes of Krishna that I love during the epic, right? Right from the introduction, from the birth, and I love again how the story. And I am a very big B.R. Chopra Mahabharat fan, right? I'll keep giving you certain references to that, but I love how it has been shown over there. And there are these verses which are generally being sung, right? I think the singer was Hemant Kumar, who had sung these verses for the B.R. Chopra rendition of the Mahabharata. But I would definitely love if all of you, after listening to this podcast, go and check it out. It's there on YouTube, right? Krishna Janma in B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata. He takes Janma, and suddenly, so basically his mother and father were captured by Kans, because there was a prophecy when Devki was pregnant with Krishna. There's a prophecy. Devki was the sister of Kans, and Kans was also, considered to be a very evil king, right? So, in fact, he had imprisoned his father himself to become the king of Mathura. So, when Devki was pregnant with for the first time, it was said that Devki's eighth son would kill Kans, right? So, Kansa had captured Devki and Vasudev, who was the father of Krishna, right, in a prison cell. And as they gave birth to every kid, he used to come and kill those kids, right? And when this eighth son was born, suddenly everyone around the jail, the jailers, the servants, the Senex, the soldiers, everyone fell unconscious. That was the energy, in the air, that all the jail doors opened one by one, and Vasudev got a basket. Suddenly a basket emerged. His also, all the chains that were tied to him got unchained. And he took the kid and he crossed the river Yamuna, and left his son with his friend whose name was Nand, right? In fact, just today I read this news. The actor who played the role of Nand just passed away, Mr. Dave. I don't remember his full name. So yeah, anyways, while he was carrying Krishna, there was lightning, thunder. The devas in Devlok also wanted to see this incarnation of Vishnu. They knew that it's an incarnation of Vishnu. There's thunder trying to capture a vision, due to lightning, trying to capture a vision of the incarnation of Vishnu, right? The river was, very vociferous, I should say, right? Trying to touch the feet of Vishnu, in respect, and was causing a lot of harm to Vasudev because he was trying to cross the river, with his son on his head in a tokri, right? So as the river levels rose up, he was finding it very difficult to, cross the river and breathe. So what Krishna did at such a young age, just born, he just lowered his legs so that the water does not rise any further and his father does not have any problems crossing him, the river, right? So such amazing stories of Krishna. I think one major character who's not very talked about is Sahadev, right? Sahadev was very, very intelligent, right? Very intelligent. He was the most intelligent. In fact, Draupadi wanted to marry someone who is, very righteous, someone who's very strong, someone who's the best archer, very skillful, someone who's very beautiful, and someone who's very intelligent, right? And when the episode happened with Kunti, when Arjun won Draupadi in her Swayamvar, and he came back with her, and Kunti had her back to the door, and she was cooking or something, and Arjun said कि देखो माँ मैं क्या लाया हूँ. She felt that he got something to eat, and she said कि पांचों भाई आपस में बांट लो. Right, so that is a version of the story, right, as to how this happened. And that is where it was decided that Draupadi marries all five of them. But it wasn't as easy, right? She obviously, people had their reservations, and that is where Krishna appeared and told to Draupadi that, what, you only wanted a person who has all these five qualities. You'll never find all these five qualities in any man ever. These five qualities are possessed by these five Pandavas individually, right? Where, as I said, Yudhishthir was the most righteous, Bhim was the most powerful, strongest, Arjun was the most skillful, he was the best archer in the world, Nakul was the most beautiful, the most handsome, and Sadev was the most intelligent, right? So when these guys were kids, and when they were with their father in the forest, right? So Pandu, as I said, had a curse basically where he could not mate with a woman, otherwise he would just die, right? So in his days, in his final days, hence in the forest, he did a lot of tapasya himself. He learned a lot. He tried to inculcate a lot of that to his kids as well. He said one thing to his sons that, when I die, take my flesh and eat it. There's a lot of gyan. I've learned a lot in the forest, and you'll get that gyan from me if you eat my flesh. So when Pandu died, the Pandavas thought about eating his flesh, but there were too many people and they were too embarrassed to do that in front of people, right? So they did not do it, and they put his last remains on fire. But Sadev, he saw some ants taking a piece of his flesh with them, right? And he picked up that piece of flesh and had it, and he was already super intelligent. This just gave him so much insight. He knew what is going to happen in the future, right? He was the father of astrology, I would say, right? Where he could, because he knew what is going to happen, he tried to invent this science where he saw the positions of the planets, and tried to figure out how does that affect a human psyche, and so on and so forth, right? So when he was a kid, and at this point of time when he ate his father's flesh, his cousin, who's Krishna, comes about and gives him and us a lesson for our lives that, if you are very smart, if you know everything, always keep your mouth shut. Don't speak. You'll make more enemies than friends. Right? So that is Krishna. Whenever he was in a dilemma, when he went to Duryodhan, to charter a peace agenda between the two sides, he went to Sahadev to ask him, I want to ask for 5 villages for you Pandavas. Which are the 5 villages I should ask for, right? Sahadev, with all the things he knew, he gave him 5 villages where, Now it had become very important for the story to happen, for the good to win over the evil, right? So he gave him five strategic villages, which he knew that Duryodhan can never agree for, right? So these were strategically placed around Hastinapur, from where, if let's say, Duryodhan obviously never trusted the Pandavas, so he always felt that from these five places they can any day attack and capture Hastinapur, right? So beautiful stories of these people. I think two things around Krishna that I would finally end this kind of this storytelling around Krishna with is his Mahavirat Roop and his Vishwaroop. Amazing, and you should read about this in various books. And again, obviously, the people who are writing these books also haven't seen, but it is their interpretations. But these are some amazing views that only a few people get to see or got to see at that point of time, right? When he had gone to charter this peace agenda, as an agent of peace to Duryodhan, and when Duryodhan refused to give the Pandavas these five villages, Krishna told him that, don't be stupid. And when Krishna told this to Duryodhan, Duryodhan was angry and he asked his soldiers to capture Krishna, put him in jail. And, that is where Krishna enlarged in his size, right? And showed his. I always get confused, and do correct me over here, the Indic Explorer. I think he showed his Mahavirat troop over here or the Vishwaroop. Yeah, so he showed the Mahavirat
I
troop.
think it was the Mahavira troop, but
Yeah, true.
people in the
Yes. I
comments can
always get confused.
probably
And generally,
just
I have
mention it.
people
Yeah,
like you over there, who help me out. But yeah, he
yeah.
showed his Mahavirat roop, which was not seen by any and everyone. Only a few people were very righteous, very pure. People like Bhishma, people like Dronacharya, right? Dhritarashtra, who was blind, he could not see anything. He was granted a drishti to see this roop of Krishna, right? So, only a few people, and people like Duryodhan, Dushasan, they could not see this roop. There was so much of shine coming out of this roop, which was so pure that, they were blinded by it, right? Similarly, after reciting the Bhagavad Gita to Arjun, Arjun was in awe of Krishna, and he finally asked him to show his real roop to Arjun. And Arjun, when he saw that roop, Krishna went into his Vishwaroop, where you could see birth, death, planets, earth, sun, galaxies, everything in him. And that roop, when Arjun saw, he felt very grateful and at the same time very scared. He wanted to see it for the longest period of time, and at the same time, he felt so scared when he looked at it. He finally, requested the god to, come back to his original form of Krishna, right? So, yeah, that is Krishna for you. We can go on and on, around stories around Krishna, but yeah, I think he's the beginning, he's the end, right? So, when I started watching the Mahabharata show as well, I think I feel he was my favorite character back then, right? The center of everything, the hero. And now, going back a full circle, now I'm slowly, as I said, moving towards, him becoming my favorite character, right? So I think that is a transition which all of you, if you've not yet started reading about or started putting interest into the Mahabharata, if you start doing it, and then there's a circle that you'll also go through, and it's a very beautiful circle to enjoy each and every piece of it, is what I would say.
Wonderful. And the part where you mentioned about Draupadi wanting those five qualities in her ideal partner, I mean, that episode kind of goes to show for young boys and girls that there is no perfect person who will have all the qualities. You got to make compromises in a relationship and move on. So, anyways, I mean, I just thought my 2 cents on that. But talking about the TV show, because you mentioned it quite often and you were influenced by the B.R. Chopra show, and there was a new show as well which came out a few years back, right? How do you compare the two shows? Which did you like and why?
To be very fair to the second show, which came in a few years ago, I think it was Ekta Kapoor's Mahabharata, if I'm not wrong. I've not seen a lot of it, right? I've seen a bit of it. And I found that also pretty interesting. I think for the young generation, for people of now, for the kids right now, I think obviously they would like that show slightly better. I've in fact even heard from a lot of people, 16, 17, 18 year olds, that they like that show a bit better, because obviously with the changes and the advancements in technology, obviously the effects, visual effects, the sound effects, everything, obviously will be much better right now as compared to back then. But I think romantics like me, and I'm pretty sure like you and others as well, of our age will always be in love with B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata. I don't think a comparison is fair to any of the two series, but definitely, my vote will always go to B.R. Chopra's version of the Mahabharata, which made me fall in love with the story. The dialogue delivery, the characters, each actor has played their roles so well over there. I think the casting is so perfect over there. And along with, as I said, the language, the dialogue delivery. As I said, every time when I see the Mahabharata, there is something new I learn. There is something new I can figure out from the dialogues as well, right? Initially, when I started reading about the Mahabharata, I felt, not a lot. There are quite a few important stories that have been missed out in that TV show. But when I go back and see that TV show during those phases as well, I feel okay, they have actually covered it. It's not that they have not. They might have done it, in a very short duration, but they have actually gone through everything in the story, right? So this is what my take is over here. But as I said, obviously modern technology with all the modern marvels, with all the sound effects and all the visual effects, I won't blame if the current generation obviously love this new way of showing Mahabharata, where obviously, as I said, costumes are a bit different, dialogues are a bit different, dialogues are still pretty pure, but not still as pure as the ones which are there in that original B.R. Chopra Mahabharata series. So my bias and my vote will be with B.R. Chopra series.
So production value wise, the new one, but storytelling and character portrayal wise, the old one. And from your recitals and discussions, has there been any less known incident of the Mahabharata which you felt you got to know from someone, or some interesting person came in on a recital
Sure,
or something
perfect.
like
I'll,
that?
I'll, I'll give you a
Any?
few. But before that, another thing about the B.R. Chopra series was the music as well. Amazing, those dohas, as I was saying, those two lines at the end of every episode used to be pretty amazing, used to give a moral. And the Samay wala bit, main samay hu, it used to always start with that, right? So that was amazing over there. Now, coming to some lesser known stories, right? So, a lot of our audiences would feel that Shakuni was a villain, right? Was a bad character, right? I already told about Duryodhan, right? So, I'll go to Shakuni over here, right? So, Shakuni, for a lot of people, was the villain in the Mahabharata, right? He made the Mahabharata happen. Probably not wrong, probably he did. But was he actually a bad character? This is something, at least during my storytelling, I leave it to the audience to figure out, because he also has a backstory of his own. So he was the brother of Gandhari. These guys were the kids basically of the king of Gandhar. Gandhar is your current day Kandahar in Afghanistan, right? So basically, this was a kingdom in current day Afghanistan, right, where Gandhari and Shakuni were brother and sister. And Shakuni was the youngest of 100 brothers, right? So he was much loved, much pampered, from the brothers, from the parents, and so on and so forth, right? And he was very smart, very cunning, right? And it was very much well known. Now, again, multiple versions of the story, right? Bhishma came to Gandhar Naresh and asked him for the hand of his daughter, which was Gandhari. But he asked for Dhritarashtra, not for Pandu, right? So both Dhritarashtra and Pandu were eligible for marriage, right? Pandu was, although the younger one, was made the king of Hastinapur, and Dhritarashtra was blind, so it was an illness which was uncurable at that point of time, and it was not looked at also in a very very good way as well, right? Obviously Pandu also had some illness, but his illness was kind of not as visible as Dhritarashtra's illness was. So when Bhishma asked Gandhari's hand for Dhritarashtra, people of Gandhar, right, were not happy. So they questioned that why are you asking for Dhritarashtra's hand and not for Pandu's hand, right? This was Shakuni as well who questioned over here. And this is where, there was a skirmish between the people from Hastinapur, from Bhishma's side, and from Gandhar Naresh's side, right? And finally, Gandhari, in order to save her family, because it was a well-known fact that no one can defeat Bhishma. He was too skilled, he was too strong, right? And he could defeat anyone. So Gandhari came around and took a piece of cloth and covered her eyes and said, ki, I am very much willing to marry Dhritarashtra and I will live a life like how my husband lives, right? And she was very dedicated to him, right? So this is one version of the story. As I said, there are different versions over here, that some versions say that after their marriage, there was some skirmish or some problem between people from Kandhar and from Hastinapur and so on, right? But what happened after this was, once the marriage happened, Bhishma invited people from Gandhar, Gandhari's father and her brothers, to Hastinapur as guests. Now, during that time, there was a rule, ki as guests, you will stay as long as the host asks you for, right? Until the host asks you to leave, you will always stay over there. And generally that is signified by the food that the host is serving you, right? So as long as the host keeps serving you food, you will oblige to your duties as a guest, and you will stay put as a guest over there. So now Bhishma had this at the back of the mind, right, that these guys did not approve of Dhritarashtra and all, so he wanted to take revenge. So what he did was, every day between the 101 people over there, the 100 brothers of Gandhari and her father, used to serve one bowl of rice, right? So every day in the place that they were served one bowl of rice. This is your food. Now he's doing his duty as a host. As guests, obviously they have to do their duty and they have to stay over there, right? And people at that time were very righteous. If there's a rule, they'll follow it. Otherwise, if they don't, and if they don't stand true to their word, it will be the biggest insult for them. They would prefer dying over that, right? So they stayed true to their word and they stayed put over there, but they formed a strategy amongst themselves. Because Bhishma's strategy was very simple. He wanted all the 100 of those brothers to fight amongst themselves for that bowl of rice and kill each other. But what those people decided was, they will give that bowl of rice to the youngest of them, who's also the most cunning, who was Shakuni. Right? So Shakuni every day was served with that bowl of rice. And he saw his father and his brothers struggle day after day with weakness. He saw them die, one after the other. And his father made him eat the flesh of his brothers as well, so that he remembered the injustice and the insult which was done to all of them by Bhishma and Hastinapur, right? Slowly, steadily, each and every of his brother died. Finally, Shakuni's father called Shakuni, when he was on his deathbed, he took a stick, he took an iron stick, and he hit Shakuni on his leg, right? Making him disabled basically, right? So hence, if you see, very carefully the shows on the Mahabharata, you'll always see, him not walking properly, right? So
Limp.
yes, he was a limp, right? So his father made him a limp again to keep reminding him that, whenever you limp, it will remind you that, this is something that happened to your family, right? At the same time, when his father died, he asked Shakuni to take out the bones of his finger and make dice out of it. So his father had put in the energy that he had in his bones over there. What his father did was basically concentrated all his power and energy in his bones of the finger, right? And once he died, Shakuni took out the bones and made dice of it. And because his father's energy and his need for revenge was absorbed in those bones, whatever Shakuni wanted out of those dice used to come. And that is how it worked, and that is how that game of dice happened. The insult to Draupadi had happened, and then Krishna finally came around. And that is also one very beautiful episode, right? When there was no one to go to, right? When she was being disrobed right in the middle, of the darbar of the sabha, where all the kings had assembled, everyone from the Pandav and Kaura family were there. That is where, she just remembered and recited Krishna. And out of nowhere, Krishna came over there, assembled, and, put in, as Dushasan was removing the cloth, he put in more cloth around her, saving her modesty, saving her respect, and so on. And Draupadi, the episode repeats. Draupadi pays back in a way, right? There was such a beautiful bond between Draupadi and Krishna. Even during the Vanvas, there were a lot of saints who had assembled. And there was this rishi whose name was, if I'm not wrong, Rishi Durvasa, who was infamous for his anger, right? He used to get very angry. Same Rishi, if I'm not wrong, he had given Kunti the boon to, have children with devs. She recited a mantra and a dev would come and give her a child, right? Now, this Rishi had come in the forest where the Pandavas were residing, and he had come with a Sangatan with a lot of other rishis as well. And Draupadi had nothing to offer to them. They had gone for a bath and they would come back for lunch, and she had nothing to offer. Again, she just remembered Krishna. और कृष्ण प्रकट हो जाते हैं, राइट? कृष्ण used to arrive whenever she used to remember him, and she puts this in front of Krishna that I have nothing, and how will I feed these rishis? And Rishi Durvasa, who's so infamous for his temper, I'm worried that he will give me some curse, because I'm not being able to feed him. And Krishna asks her, Ki, do you really not have anything? Bring me all the utensils, right? And in one of the utensils, there was a piece of rice, right? One piece of rice, and Krishna takes it and eats it. And when he eats that piece of rice, all the rishis who are bathing suddenly feel very full in their stomachs, right? And they do not now want to eat anything, and they just want to go away, right? So this happened. And then obviously before the Vanvas, when there was the coronation of Yudhishthir, right? When they went to Khandav Prast and made it Indraprast, there was a Rajasuya Yagya that was organized, right? And Krishna had a nephew whose name was Shishupal, who Krishna was prophesied that Krishna would kill him basically, right? Shishupal did not have a lot of respect for Krishna, and the Pandavas had made Krishna the chief guest, right? So the center of the gathering, and they were washing his feet and everything, and that is where Shishupal comes in. एंड ही टेल्स द पांडवास कि आपने कौन से चोर को बना दिया, ये चोर को आपने बना दिया गेस्ट, है ना, ये पागल आदमी है, चोर है, एक एक करके ही वाज गिविंग galis to Krishna basically, right? And when it was prophesied that Krishna would be the one who would kill Shishupal, Shishupal's mother. Actually, Shishupal was Krishna's nephew or cousin, I'm not sure. So Shishupal's mother was Krishna's aunt or cousin sister, I'm not very sure, but she made Krishna basically, she pleaded to Krishna that please don't kill my son. And Krishna, could not say no to her, but could not say yes to her as well. And that was the beauty of Krishna, right? He was always correct, and he always got his way around things, right? So he promised her that he would let शिशुपाल go 100 times. तो बोला 100 बार तो यार जाने दूंगा, तो उसमें तो मतलब चिली है, कुछ होगा नहीं उसको, तो आई लेट हिम गो 100 times, but the 101st time he does something wrong, I will kill him. And Krishna kept counting, everyone stopped Shishupal, and everyone was like, Krishna आप ये होने कैसे दे रहे हो? Balram and Bhishma and the Pandavas, all of them felt very angry with Shishupal, insulting Krishna like that. And Krishna used to just make everyone stop, just counting in his head, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on, 100. When it was 100, he asked Shishupal one last time, "Now don't speak any further, otherwise you'll get killed." And he was like, "I don't give a damn to you," And he started again abusing him. And then Krishna took out his chakra, threw his chakra, which is a spear basically, right? He threw his chakra on Shishupal and killed him. And that is where, again, this bond between Draupadi and Krishna, gets elaborated so well again, that she just runs to him without any hesitation, takes out a piece of cloth from her pallu, right? She tears a piece of cloth and she, ties it around his finger, right? And this is where Krishna promised her, कि ये जो तुमने बांधा है ना ये कपड़ा, Krishna also had a lot of, sisterly love for Draupadi. ये जो कपड़ा तुमने बांधा है ना, इसके हर एक धागे का जो उधार है मेरे ऊपर, वो मैं वापस लौटाऊंगा, right? And that is what he does when that, the Dyut Krida, as that episode is said, happens, right? He gives back, the cloth. So yeah, we were talking about Shakuni and we went to Krishna again. See, everything starts and ends with him. But yeah, this was the story of Shakuni. So he also had this backstory, and that is why he was always motivated to have these Kauravas and Pandavas fight amongst themselves, right? He always, made situations in such a way, and such was his aura and influence on Duryodhan, that he used to do everything that Shakuni asked him to do, right? So शकुनी ने बस यही कर दिया, उसने बस दुर्योधन के ऊपर अपना रोप जमा दिया, और फिर दुर्योधन के थ्रू उसके कंधे पे बंदूक रख के एक तरह से he was playing his cards, right? And the day the war happened, Shakuni had fulfilled the promise that he had made to his father, right? So that was Shakuni. Another very interesting bit during these recitals, that we've come across, and I won't take a lot of time, I think that day, was when we were doing a character discussion on Karna. Somewhere, there was this perspective that someone put in, what if Karna is actually a villain? We see him as a hero, but what if he did what he did in a kind of a disguise, knowing everything like this is going to happen? And what if his intention was to finally, win it with Duryodhan and then say that he's the eldest brother, and Duryodhan would not even say no to him and give him the kingdom?
Actually, I want to ask you a very interesting thing that you mentioned, because you do two formats. One is a recital of the story, which is a one way, basically, you are telling the story. narrating it over a series of days. The other one is the character discussion, right? Where it's more of a two-way conversation. So, how do you see both the formats? How have they been received? What's the general feedback like on that?
Amazing. So yeah, I personally love both the formats, right? Because recital is like the entire story, start to finish, from one person's perspective, right? Obviously, with inputs from other people as well. Generally, I've been the person who's been giving the perspective, but I do keep getting inputs from other people as well, which gives me a lot of perspective about the story and about various takes on the story, right? So, as a reciter, obviously, it's great to recite the story and get perspective from other people as well, right? I think as an audience as well, I've even been an audience in such recitals when other people have recited the story, and I've listened, and it's been great to just sit over there, reflect, have your thoughts to yourselves, be creative, have the freedom to think as much as you can, to whatever extent, and go as deep as you want, while someone is talking about the story, right? So I love that perspective. And I've received some great feedback from people as well. As I said, people keep coming back to these recital, even though it's the same story I'm going to recite every week, they still keep coming over and over again, because they also get to learn something new each and every time they delve deep into a part of the story. When it comes to the discussions, oh my god, they are again very insightful, again lots of knowledge. People who have not read a lot, who may not be knowing a lot about the Mahabharata, also join in. They probably may not speak as much, but there's so much to take and so many perspectives to learn from, right? So that is a part of it. And people who obviously have read a lot, get a platform to put in their thoughts, check some stories, some hypotheses, figure out some logics. And a lot of times it has happened, that while discussing, you tend to get perspective on so many things, and you see the story in some way which you might have not even thought of in the past, right? So both the types of sessions have their charm. Obviously, the first type of session we've done a lot more times, so obviously has been taken very well and has had a great response. But second type of session also, especially, I think first type of session, people who don't know as much about the Mahabharata, they enjoy a lot, where we recite the entire story. When we do a character discussion, when it's an open platform, it's a round table. I think people who've read, some literature around the Mahabharata, who've, had interest since a long time, who've seen certain shows and dramas, I feel that they have a slightly more bias towards these kind of events. Having said that, as I said, interchangeability here, people attend both kinds of events. But yeah, this is the kind of feedback that I've received around these two kinds of events.
And in terms of doing these events, what have been your general takeaways, from your interactions with people after doing so many events over 4 5 years now, right? Or more, in terms of, how influenced are people in terms of through books? Do they know more through the television show or through the grandmother stories, or any other takeaways from doing these events?
Agreed. So, first of all, my major takeaway is there is always something to learn, right? Every time you discuss or you go into the story of the Mahabharata, you have something new to learn each and every time, right? So, be it watching the TV show again, be it doing a recital session, be it having a discussion, even today while talking to you, I think there's again something that I've gained, right? So personally, that is one major takeaway for me and my major motivation to do these sessions. Now when it comes to the audience that attend these events, I think, and I wasn't expecting, I thought that romantics around the BR Chopra show would be more that I would see. But I've seen a good mix. It's not that I don't see people who've been influenced by the BR Chopra show. Obviously, there are quite a few of them. There's a good mix. We have people who've read a lot of literature. We have people who've heard stories about the Mahabharata from their grandparents, or from their parents, who attend these sessions, and very very motivated as well, these people, because they also want to understand and know what their grandparents and their ancestors have been fascinated about, right? So they also want to get deep into the story and learn from it, right? So that is the kind of perspective that we see, and generally people are there to learn irrespective of the length of the session. Generally, as I said, I promised 3, but I generally take it to 4 hours, irrespective of the length. And people generally feel a bit starved, and sitting in one place might not feel as comfortable, but they still sit till the end, and they only move once. We decide, okay, this is it for today, and now we'll meet the next time and discuss the rest of the story. So irrespective of the backgrounds, I think from wherever they are influenced, whenever they come, I see good interest. I don't see people coming for leisure or fun. I mean, leisure obviously, yes, but it's not like, sometimes you might feel, and even before I started, I used to be very scared. What if someone comes and makes fun of the epic? What if someone is very hardcore around it, and challenges each and everything that you say, and you don't have things to prove, right? Because you've also read it somewhere, you've also seen things somewhere, right? So having said that, I think we've been lucky. We've had people who've been very empathetic. Whatever mistakes we make, sometimes we also make mistakes. We give out the wrong name, or we probably may not be able to recite an incident very properly, or to the exact detailing that it might be having, right? So, but people, as I said, have been very receptive, have been very forthcoming. We put it in our imagery or in our context setting only, that this is something we've devised for the youth, right? So even 60, 70 year olds also have come and attended our event, but they've always behaved like a 25, 30-year-old, right? They've also kind of gelled in with us, and spoken in our language itself. So this is something amazing which happens in these events that we do.
Very interesting to
Yes.
know that even older people come to these young hip hop places just because there is Mahabharata going on, right? That's like a huge leap of faith.
I mean, they don't know what
And
Dulali is, right? So they just try to search for the place. I get calls because obviously these guys are more comfortable with calls rather than using Google Maps and all. So I keep getting calls, beta, where is this place? How do I search it? Will I get proper seating or not? So this keeps happening. But yeah, very, as I said, very happy that we have people from all walks of life coming in, but we've had very cordial discussions, right? It's been intense. Yes, there have been people having various point of views, right? So that is, it's been intense, but it's always been healthy. People have come and learned something, and went back.
there's been no criticism from purists or anything like that, right?
Nothing
Like,
very, no. I mean, see, once or twice we obviously come across, ki, this story actually happened like this. You could have, said this or something on those lines, right? So that ways we obviously get some feedback, but never very harsh criticism. Everyone who's come in has really enjoyed it. I've been very grateful. You're doing something like this. It's something which made our day today, and looking forward to the next such gathering as well, right? So yeah, in fact, some of
it's not just the story. It's not just the story, Suneet, but because it's the packaging and the format, it's so unorthodox, right? So has that ever been like an issue at all, or has that ever been like, most people actually I know that have liked it, but has that ever been a criticism around
So
it?
to be honest, no. Matlab, there have been criticism, but from people who've not attended the events, right? So I'll just give the audience a brief, right? So we generally used to meet at Dulali Tap Room every Saturday, right? So Dulali Tap Room is a amazing place. It's a well lit beer place, right? So it's beer and food and coffee and chai. Everything is served over there, right? So as I said, it's a place for the youth, right? And even while discussing, there are guests who like to have a glass of beer while we are discussing the Mahabharata, right? So that is the context, for this particular question, for the audiences. People who come in have never complained about it, right? People have enjoyed what we are doing. Obviously, when I tell certain people I know or people I meet, that I do something like this, I do it at places like Dulali, they're like, oh, is it even allowed to talk about the Mahabharata over there? Bro, we are not discussing anything religion, right? It's a purely spiritual, it's a purely intellectual discussion that we are doing, right? We are just doing it to learn and to be better versions of ourselves. So there's nothing religious around this. We don't have any biases over here. Everyone is welcome to put in their thoughts. So yeah, after that, obviously they ease a bit. Some of them have even then, shown interest and come and visited as well. Even my mother, has come a lot of times, and she was also a bit hesitant in the beginning, ऐसी कैसी जगहों पे तुम करते हो, right? But after the vibe, as you said, the packaging around it is something, and I can't put it into words. It's very difficult for me to put it into words or replicate it somewhere else as well, right? And Kasa Kai, we're trying to do it for various activities and hobbies people have, right? So we have open mics also at such places. We have match screenings as well, right? People coming and watching football for 2 hours, and having their food and beers and so on, right? At the same time, we have dance workshops also at such places. Lots of things that we do. We try to make the environment very comfortable for people, right? So our major intention is to make it very comfortable, to make them feel comfortable in their own skin. Because this is an example I give to everyone, especially around Mahabharata. If I go to my friends one particular Saturday evening and I ask them, "Ki, yaar, let's discuss the Mahabharata," 99 out of 100 or probably even more times I'll be laughed at. कि ये कहाँ से आ गया, ये देखो, है ना, कुछ बोलेंगे युधिष्ठिर का बेटा ये आ गया नया धृतराष्ट्र, ये बोलेगा महाभारत, है ना, समथिंग लाइक दिस, विल गेट टू हियर. But this is a place where if you've had interest in the Mahabharat, you will always feel comfortable, and I hope that you will feel proud to be in the skin that you are in, right? So that is the kind of ambience we try to create. Now, it could be a Dulali tap room, it could be a Curly's cafe, it could just be a corner of a street as well, right? The intention is whenever people come for 3 hours, they forget everything else outside the room, and they just focus on the thing that they love. In this case, it's the Mahabharata. Sometimes it's poetry telling, sometimes it's dance, right? So this is the intention that we have over here. So in our Mahabharata recitals as well, people who may be found weird by their friends that they have so much interest in Mahabharata, especially in our age, right, 25, 30-year-olds, they will feel very comfortable and much more comfortable, confident, and proud in their skins.
So if someone, Suneet, comes to you, like let's say the demographic probably is a Bandra kid who has no knowledge, Sobo type of a person just comes who has no knowledge about the Mahabharata, and he just comes to your event and just says, Suneet, why do you think I should attend this event? How is it relevant to the youth and to the modern world? What would be your pitch to a person like that? And this is again a hypothetical question, because unless you're living under a rock in India, you probably know something or the other about the Mahabharata. But let's say this person is a Sobo kid or from Bandra, knows nothing about it. Why should he care? So, what would your pitch be?
My pitch is going to be very simple, that it's a fun story, irrespective. It's just a fun story. You would enjoy listening to this story. So give it a shot, is what I would say. In the past, we've had people from other countries also, whenever they're visiting India, showing interest. But I want to obviously focus on the learning bit when it comes to, just giving a one sentence pitch. My pitch is going to be very simple. It's a fun, interesting story. Come and hear it out.
Great. I think with that, we come to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for giving your time, Suneet. It was a very insightful discussion.
It is a pleasure.
So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, always remember Dharma rocks. See you around.